All right, on a lot of people's minds right now as we bring in Sid Sixero is the idea of travel. And we should preface this segment here with federal government still saying, listen, there's a travel advisory. We don't recommend you do it, but it would be very naive of us to say that no one's doing it, Sid. We're what, a month away from March break?
Oh, for sure. As people approach March break, some people have already made the decision they're going to go. Whenever you decide you're going to go, you do need to remember some things, even in this period of restrictions somewhat being lifted around the globe. Barry Choi, travel expert, is joining us to give us some info. Barry, good morning.
Good morning, gang.
Barry, let's start with what you need to know here before you book. I mean, it's been eons since I came close to booking a ticket to go anywhere. What's the first thing families need to keep in mind here?
I would say the biggest thing that a lot of parents, families often forget that is if you've got an unvaccinated child at home and you're traveling overseas with them, they're not allowed back in school or daycare for 14 days. So your 1 week March break has all of a sudden become 3 weeks for the kids. I know the kids will love that, but the parents might be very surprised to learn that, especially if they've already booked their vacation.
Yes, they'll be very surprised and really not happy at all. Let's just say that. What people should note is different places have different restrictions. I'll be very honest. Sid, Barry, I got the travel bug last night, at least in my head I did. And I went online just to look, and you really have to take note of different countries, what is needed, because it isn't just a flat out rule.
That's exactly it. I'll admit I want to travel, but I don't need to get on a cruise to get quarantined to tell you how much it will suck, But people at home, they need to know that there are different rules no matter where you go. That could be the U.S. to the Caribbean. Generally speaking, you need to look at the local rules on the ground. Some places you can get in without a vaccine, you can get in without a PCR test, but that's not the case for most places. A lot of them still require a negative PCR test or a negative rapid test. So you really got to look into the details, because the last thing you want to do is show up at the airport and be denied boarding, because they are paying close attention, because obviously COVID is still a concern for many countries in the world.
All right, now, Barry, and you've hit on a couple of things already, but returning home after the trip, and again, we have to underline this and emphasize this. These things can change, as we know, on a dime in terms of our borders and in terms of what the federal government allows and does not allow. But aside from some of the things you've already pointed out here, what are the other aspects of returning home from vacation people need to keep in mind?
Yeah, right now with Canada, when you return home, you do need a negative PCR test. So a lot of people assume that, hey, I'm driving across the border, I don't need one, I'll be back in 72 hours. No, they got rid of that back in December. So even if you're driving for a quick shopping trip, you need that negative PCR test. It has to be in a foreign country. Now, a lot of people at home are probably saying, hey, you know what? I actually got COVID before. What's the rules now? Because I could possibly test positive again. Well, that's the case. When you return to Canada, you don't need to take another test again if you've tested positive. However, you need a doctor's note and you need proof that you actually tested positive. And that test must have happened within 10 to 180 days from the time you're departing back to Canada. So there's a lot of different rules in place that you need to be aware of. Even some other things too, also, we haven't really touched on. It's like, if you're going to travel, you should be booking fully refundable tickets, because as we've all learned over this pandemic, anything can happen at any time.
That's very fair. Can you go into some details here? Because you shouldn't be looking for a blank, you shouldn't assume that your credit card has that travel insurance built in. You really need to look for some COVID-specific insurance, yes?
Yeah, we're all adults here. I like to think we've read at least one insurance policy in our lives, and we've all gone like, what is this? There's too many terms and conditions to follow. And unfortunately, right now with COVID-19, you got to be very clear. Not every single policy is covering COVID-19. For example, credit cards and generally speaking, work travel insurance does not cover it. So you would need to buy a separate travel insurance policy. On a positive note, a lot of destinations are including travel insurance, including tour operators. For example, Air Canada Vacations, they have a flex care package that you can buy, which gives you a full refund fund or a credit depending on how early you cancel. So normally in the past, a lot of people would skip out on these cancellation policies thinking, hey, I'm going to go no matter what. Well, you know what? Guess what? Right now, if you get COVID, you might not be able to go. And I would rather pay that $100 per person as opposed to losing my entire amount.
Again, to underline the point, the federal government is saying, please don't do this. We all know people are doing this, especially with March break coming up. But some very important points there to keep in mind. Barry Choi, at Barry Choi on social, if you want more of this really valuable information. Barry, have a great day, sir. Thanks,
Barry.
Anytime. Have a good one. See you later.